morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to Workplace Health Insights Live. For those of you joining us for the first time, we've designed this series to discuss the healthcare challenges facing UK businesses. It's all part of our commitment to keep you updated on the latest health and wellbeing trends, so you always feel one step ahead. To complement these events, we also provide our clients and intermediaries with exclusive access to the Bupa Academy, and we're releasing new Academy modules all the time. Following today's session, we'll be launching a new bite-sized module to support line managers to have conversations about the menopause, so look out for this landing soon. So on to today. Well, across the UK, competition for talent has never been fiercer. According to the latest ONS data, job vacancies in the UK rose to a new record high of over 1.2 million last year, and over a quarter of employees are seeking new employment opportunities. These stats demonstrate the ongoing challenge for businesses to attract and retain their employees. Workplace health and wellbeing is now recognised as a key priority for any talent strategy, and building healthier and happier workforces has never been so important. Research carried out by Glint shows that an employer's relationship with their manager has a greater impact on engagement than anything else. Yet only 26% of managers feel they have the skills needed to foster individual and team engagement. So today we're going to discuss the vital role that managers can play in supporting the well-being of their teams to create happier workplaces, which is a key driver to why someone would join and stay at your organisation. So in terms of format today, we're going to host two mini panel discussions. And first up, I'm delighted to be joined by Stephen Buck, Principal Consultant at Glint, and Nigel Sullivan, Chief Sustainability and People Officer at Bupa, who will discuss the changing remit of line managers and their critical role in workplace wellbeing. We'll then explore the role of the line manager in the context of a clinical case study. Dr. Samantha Wild, Bupa's Women's Health Clinical Lead, will discuss how managers can best support employees through the menopause. And we're delighted that Kyle Edwards, Health and Wellbeing Manager, and Kristy Steele, Senior People Policy Manager, will join Sam to share how Lloyds Banking Group have approached supporting line managers when it comes, again, to menopause in the workplace. And as always, we'll then take time for Q&A. So please make sure you send us your questions throughout the session, and we'll try and get to as many of them as we can. So, Nigel, Stephen, looking forward to you joining me here on the screen. Let's get started. There you are. Great. Thank you so much for joining us, both of you, this morning. I'm going to come to you first, Nigel, and I'm going to talk about that topic that unfortunately we still talk about, which is the pandemic. So when you think about the pandemic and sitting around boardrooms and the agenda that is going on in the boardroom with so many competing priorities right now, what topics do you think are really front of mind for leadership teams, and how much of a priority is the talent challenge?
Yeah, hi everybody, and great to be with you. I think, Mark, I'm part of a number of different groups, of chief people officers, etc. And I think there's always contending priorities in boardrooms, but I think I would say in the sort of people space, sustainability, talent, and health and well-being, and probably health and well-being being number one after the pandemic, or towards the end of this pandemic, I think is probably the number one thing. The talent piece, there's been a shift. I mean, there's been a real shift in that. There's a guy called Larry Fink, who is the chairman of BlackRock, which is the world's biggest investment fund, and he's talked about how if you like, the power of employees, of workers, has shifted. And you mentioned 1.2 million vacancies in the UK. There are 11 million vacancies in the US. And I think for the UK, the lack of mobility, the impact of Brexit, the Great Resignation, the fact that the people in the front line, many frontline jobs, they were in the center of the storm over the last couple of years of the pandemic, and now they're at the heart of the recovery, and they know it. So I think paying lip service to talent or any of the other topics is employers who do that, I think, are playing with fire, to be honest with you. So I think it's been a shift.
Great, thank you, Nigel and Stephen. Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Morning.
From your perspective, with all the companies that you observe, how have you seen the role of the manager change from pre-pandemic to post-pandemic?
It's undeniable it's shifted. The primary thing that we've looked at is along the lines of that a manager previously has been expected to manage their employees. I hate to use the word as a commodity, but as a P&L. They're people who are part of the organization who are there to work. And I know that sounds like a really crass way of putting it, but a lot of managers around the world only really feel competent doing those types of things. And that doesn't need to be as harsh as it sounds. I'm talking about regular check-ins, regular conversations, performance appraisal, approving things, the standard management 101 type things. What's shifted is that managers are increasingly, started by the pandemic, increasingly expected to view their employees as human beings again. So things that as a manager myself, I would have specifically avoided, like asking people about their family, asking people how they're doing, asking about mental health, asking about well-being, things which were really things to be avoided, and now very much at the front of mind for employees, and they expected their managers to talk about it. So in essence, we're looking at moving away from that more rigorous transactional approach to management and really moving towards people being viewed as individual beings within the organization. Somebody said to me recently that the organizations are expected to work for their employees and not the other way around anymore. And I think that's quite a useful thing to bear in mind.
Wow, yeah, quite a shift, I think, in just such a short period of time of those couple of years. So Nigel, if employee expectations are changing about what they want from their employer, what are the things you think that those employees are expecting? And realistically, can a line manager really influence that experience?
Yeah, I think I agree with what Steve just said. Stephen and I know each other, by the way. We're a Glint customer as well. I think one of the things that's really changed, that maybe start with the organization and go to the manager piece. But I think Mark, that what's changed is a thing called the Edelman Index, and it's published every year. It's about trust. Where's trust? And trust in, I think it's about 5 years in a row now. It's constantly shifting away from governments and into corporations. So I think the expectation from current and prospective employees is getting greater, which is a double-edged sword, I think. It's an opportunity for companies and corporations to really step up, and that's also a challenge because there's an expectation there. I mean, in terms of that expectation, 8 to 10 employees out of that. I was looking at this Trust Barometer latest report, which is just at the beginning of the year. 8 to 10 employees expect their company to play a meaningful role in good health. And when people feel cared for, they're 3 times more likely to be happy working for their company. 4 times more recommending that the company would be a good place for their friends or colleagues or outside work to work for. So I think that's important. I think for managers, flexibility is important. We know that giving people flexibility has a 2x, recommendation piece. And I think, for managers, and it sort of goes to what Stephen was saying, I think, a lot of people have continued to be physically distant, but emotionally much more connected to their people. And I think that showing that vulnerability, engaging with people on that personal level, is making a big difference. So I think it's kind of it's a dual thing. The corporation needs to do some things, but also there's a lot the manager can do to make that employment experience very fulfilling.
I really like this idea, Nigel, of this kind of reverse interview where in the old world, obviously you turn up as a manager and you've got your 60 questions you're going to grill the candidate. We're almost shifting that around now, aren't we, to as a manager, you're turning up having had to have really prepared, and you're not sure what you're going to be asked in the interview because the power has shifted to those potential candidates. And I think you can sense it just from the stuff you've already talked about. You can feel that momentum changing. Stephen, when you think about what you see then across the labour market and across your database, the best managers, the people who are really standing out, what are they doing that's different?
I want to be clear about something before I start on directly answering the question, that all the things I talked about, those transactional things, are still important. You still need managers to be holding things together. But the best way I can describe it is if you walk into your office or your home office or anything like that, and you see the chair in front of you that you're about to sit on for the day, it's very unusual for you to go, great, that's the chair, that's going to make the difference. But if for some reason the chair's not there in any given day, then you're going to notice it. And it's the same with those transactional things. You need to have the nuts and bolts and the infrastructure. But we know from research that we've done actually quite recently and built upon through the pandemic, and we call it people success, by the way, which is in a nutshell helping people be happier and more successful at work. We know that there's 6 fundamental things that the best managers are doing, and we've been able to look at many hundreds of millions of data points to arrive at this. The first one is people need to know what they're doing. They need to have a sense of purpose. They need to feel part of something that's bigger than themselves. So that helps people move away from just turning up to work and putting in the time, so they can have an impact on themselves, on others, and also drive the organization forward. They need to be adaptable. They need to have a sense of clarity. What is it that I'm doing? What does success look like? How do I know when I'm on track? Thinking about the managers, then helping them reprioritize when things change. So that goes into agility and flexibility. Some of the best managers are really getting a handle on growth and growth opportunities now. So it's not just about training and competence, it's about taking the strengths that employees have, maximizing those, taking on new opportunities, and the manager is an essential part of helping reveal and really support those things. The next thing is around empowerment, and many of the employee surveys that you may have either run or completed in the past will have talked about empowerment. It's around autonomy and trust. But beyond just those cultural things, do I have access to the right people? Is my manager helping create that network for me to succeed and work effectively? And then on to some of the things I know Nigel is very heavily invested in, and it's around some of the sustainability and, of course, the inclusion and belonging side of things. So we know that and Nigel referred to that physical connection. We know that was eroded at the beginning of the pandemic. And we know that it's one of the most important things for employees as they're now back in the office or whatever it might be in their circumstances. But it's not just a physical connection in the sense of a water cooler. It's a sense of feeling trusted, feeling a sense of belonging at the organization, and actually believing in what the organization is setting out to do in terms of its own values. And then finally, last but certainly not least, is around well-being. Do I feel respected? Do I feel safe? So beyond just physical safety, am I treated with equity? Am I trusted with the flexibility to direct my talents in the right direction? And all of that, of course, is targeted on one's own individual health and happiness. So quite a few things there, but we've just refined that list, and that's what we're calling informally People Success 2.0. So you'll see a lot of work that Glynn's are producing around that.
Easy then. That sounds dead straightforward. Everyone on this call can immediately walk out the room and suddenly start doing all those things. It's quite a shift, I think, of what we're talking about from where perhaps people were. Nigel, you mentioned the Edelman Trust Barometer, and I think started to paint a picture about the expectation that employees have of their employers alongside things like governments and so on. We're hearing more and more about organisations' roles in creating this kind of social enterprise and venturing into that territory. If I'm an employee and my organisation starts to play that bigger role, what benefit do you think that brings to me, and how does it help line managers to really do some of the things that Stephen's referring to?
I think, again, Mark, this is another area. I'm very wary of fads and short-term things. But one of the things that's been consistent now, I think it's about 3 years now, in Deloitte Human Capital's management survey, is the sense of social enterprise for organizations is number one, really, and in their research. And I think it can be quite hard to achieve for organizations. The Bupa people here work for an organization that was started 75 years ago with a purpose, and it's continued to do that. And we're in quite a privileged position, I think, to be able to speak to that. And it's not always the case, and the purpose of organizations have for many years, been shareholder value and nothing much else. And I've worked in that environment myself, most of my career. So I think people are looking for purpose. They're looking for meaningful work, that drives that purpose. And they're looking for organizations that have strong values, and that those values translate into an enterprise that not only makes money, but also contributes to the society and the communities that the people that work there are part of. And I think that's, again, I think it's a shift. And I think if employers don't get that, you're not gonna have the best talent joining you, and you're not gonna have people staying with you going forward. And the flip side is, if you have it, the best people will want to come and join you and do that work and drive the performance of the organization. So I think it's a complete win-win to go down the social enterprise route. I think it's a commercial benefit, not just a nice to have sort of fluffy kind of thing.
Great. And I guess also in terms of that talent attraction piece, that kind of organization attracts the best leaders as well, who then amplify the message and really bring things to life in the way that Stephen's described. So let's
Mark, I was just going to say that, because people give their best when they belong. If they feel they belong to something, they do their best work. I'm quite a simple person, really, the way I think about things, and that's all part of it. The more you can bring your best self to work, the better work you'll do, and the more you'll enjoy it. And you'll get it's just a win-win in my opinion. Yeah,
completely. Let's move the conversation on a little bit then to be a bit more specific around health and well-being. So again, Stephen, from what you see on that topic and that particular strand, what kind of things do you see organizations do and managers do in particular that are making a real difference?
I'll start by talking about what people aren't doing. And one of the great things about my job is that I get to see many organizations at work. I get to see fantastic best practices. I get to share them with people like you who are joining this session today. The flip side of it, which I don't talk about in sessions like this, is that I also get to see some pretty dreadful practices as well. The reason I say that is not to be facetious, but actually that this is particularly relevant when it comes to health and well-being. And we saw numerous examples with unfortunately some of our clients at Glint, where we were just things as simple as working from home, where leaders were saying all the right things externally. So they were doing press conferences, they were doing town halls, they were doing whatever it might be, marketing activities, and saying how important it was. Things like that Nigel had said. It's a no-brainer. It's a win-win. We have to do this. We're all about this at XYZ company, and then doing it from the office when they've insisted that everybody work from home, doing these town halls from the office, insisting that everybody's brought back to the office. I'm sure we could all reel off a number of anecdotes from our own employments of where a leader has done the exact opposite of what they were saying in the glossy outside world-facing activities. So that brings me back to my point, which is it really has to be through role modeling. And I've seen some fantastic managers make quite drastic bad steps in the field of well-being, where they're just not practicing what they preach. So whether it be workload, we know there's a huge amount of attention being given to burnout at the moment. So saying that it's supported and then emailing people at the weekends. And I know a lot of the technology is now supporting that. Microsoft's the Dynamics things that many of you may have seen, where you get an email saying you've been spending X amount of hours outside your working time doing emails, or you're sending emails in the wrong time zone. All of these things are having an impact at chipping away at people's belief that the managers are actually supporting what they're saying externally. So another great example is if they're talking about well-being activities, whether it's health and wellness activities, are they doing them themselves? Are they carving out time in their day to say, I'm unavailable in this hour or two because I'll be walking the dog or doing yoga or having a walk or just having some quiet time alone? Because if you can't see your manager or your leaders doing that from the very, very top, how on earth can you expect that to be part of the culture that you're part of?
Yeah, great. And I was kind of holding the mirror up a bit there, Stephen, when you were talking, thinking, oh no, I've done that. I did that on Tuesday. And you've got to really work hard, haven't you, to change your own habits and realise that shadow that you cast. And often behind a laptop, you have no idea the impact you have when the other person's laptop pings at, say, 8 o'clock at night and they're watching TV or whatever, and particularly with phones as well. It's not just laptops.
We've all done it, Mark. We've all done it, but many people don't have that mirror sometimes forcibly held up to them. You know, the best managers may recognize those traits, but obviously listening to your employees is a critical part of what we do, and that provides the mirror for many of those managers to act.
I think I'm expecting a tough time from some of my team when I get off this call today. Just maybe they'll gift me a mirror to have a look at. Nigel, so health and wellbeing, then organisations setting themselves up. We've talked a little bit about role modelling. If you're a line manager, though, sometimes as you start to get into health and wellbeing, you want to create a great environment for people to work in, but sometimes you get dragged into conversations, or you open up conversations and you think, oh, I don't know how far to go on this. Mental health's a great example about where your role starts and stops and how far you need to go. Have you got any thoughts around, where that line is and how we help people to kind of start the conversation knowing that they could open up something they don't feel equipped necessarily to deal with?
Yeah, it's tricky. I don't have a great answer for this one, Mark, because it's a tricky question. But just on the previous point, just one of the things, and I stole this from somebody else, so I can't take any credit. But at the bottom of my emails, it says something like, "I sent this email." I plagiarized this from someone else, someone at Deloitte, funnily enough, one of the partners. But I've sent this email at a time that's convenient to me. That doesn't mean you need to respond right now. You respond when it's convenient for you. And I think, just back to the shadow that we cast, sort of thing. And I think, because sometimes my emails do go out in the middle of the night or, early in the morning. But I think on that, we wrestled with this a couple of years ago at Bupa on the mental health side and did a lot of training for managers. And I think I would liken it to, and this isn't a great answer, to be honest, to your question, because it's a tricky area. Because, obviously, let's be simplistic about it. There's 24 hours in a day, and you're getting a sort of third of that, roughly, in terms of a person. So there's all the other stuff that goes on in their life during the working week, and then at the weekends as well. So, and the holiday times as well. So you're getting much less than a third actually of someone's time. So, their life and their work is, in their mind is combined, and so, but most of it's outside what we do and what we on the psychological contract and the physical contract that we have with in terms of employment. And we got to remember that we are employers. We're not everything to people. And it's important that where that line is quite a difficult one. On the mental health thing, what we did was we likened it to first aid training, so spotting the signs, spotting the signs, being able to have the conversations. But in terms of the intervention, that's probably best in that particular case. That's best, done with professionals, who are trained in that area. We do need to be careful. We don't overstep marks as well. And I think Stephen made the point earlier. There is still the crunchy stuff of management to do around performance and all the rest of it. But I think that's important to do that. But creating an environment, it's back to the belonging, creating a psychologically safe place for people is the most important thing you can do. Because if people feel psychologically safe, then you're much more likely to hear from them when they've got problems or they need help. And then how you respond to that obviously is down to the circumstances, but important to try and find a line that, but I would say it's important to get to the line and not step away from the line, if you know what I mean, because you'll probably do more help than harm. People left on their own, not being able to talk about issues and stuff like that. That's usually when it goes wrong for people. And, that's when mental health kicks in, because it's so much of it's hidden below the surface.
No, great. And I think there's loads of evidence across a number of topics, aren't there, that it's better to walk towards the discomfort and at least try to show you're interested, try and start the conversation, even if you might not be perfect at how you handle it. That's still most of the time better than ignoring it or shying away from it. as a leader. In the spirit of this sort of shift that we're going on for line managers, then, Stephen, what areas of support do you think that people are starting to show where they want help to feel more confident in making this transition?
It's actually to build on something Nigel just said, and I thought about this as he was talking. One thing that I do in my spare time is I'm a scuba diver. I'm also a certified rescue diver. And when I did the training for that, they said most people, when they see somebody drowning, will just jump in and try and save them. And actually, more people drown trying to save somebody else who's basically panicking than the people panicking themselves. What you should do in those situations is not jump in, look around and say, what available support is there? Is there something I can throw into that person? Is there a life buoy? Is there a stick? Is there something physical other than myself that I can throw in the water to save them? As usual, I've gone into a tangent, but there is a point. The point is that, as Nigel said, managers are not there to save the world. They're not there to rescue every situation. And people really do struggle with some of those personal interventions. There's no management training course that you can go on to make you better at understanding people's psychological safety needs or their home circumstances, which, of course, could be different for every employee in the team. What they can do, however, is do what I said before, to take stock, not jump in and say, what resources are available for that person? Is it an employee assistance program? Is there some mental health counselling support? Is there something that could be done to help them with their family circumstances that might be different from somebody else? That's the skill of where managers are really going to be helpful, rather than panicking and jumping in and potentially doing, as Nigel said, more harm than good. So it's those, I hate the term soft HR things, but a lot of it is those softer HR things that people are just not, they're used to deferring to HR, and now they're at the centre of the fray.
Thank you. So just one last question I'm going to ask both of you, then just to finish off before we move into the next section. So simple question. In your view, do people leave managers or do people leave companies? Stephen, I'll come to you first for your verdict.
It's a bit of both. I've always really actively disliked the expression that people join organisations and leave managers. But it was because it was really angled at the very transactional things that managers were doing. I think if you think of managers as leaders, as conduits for the culture, the values, the strategy of the organisation, now we're talking. Because if you're not creating that safety, that sense of belonging, that sense of culture, then why belong? I wouldn't want to belong to anything that didn't reflect those things. So if the manager's accurately and effectively doing those things, sure, I'd leave the manager. But to my table chair analogy before, you can swap a manager out and be just as effective at doing the basics.
Nigel, I think you might say what Stephen said, but have you got any colour that you...
You know me too well. I completely agree. I hate the phrase and I don't believe it. I think it's some people leave managers. I think people leave organisations more than they leave managers, to be honest with you. The great resignation that's happened isn't a lot to do with managers. That's to do with people have had enough of whatever they were doing before, their jobs, the values of the organisation, all the stuff we've talked about previously, whether it's social enterprise, what they think's important in life. I think it's as much about that. And I think but I wouldn't underestimate the role of the manager and representing the values of the company and also their humanity and how they can support their people as well. I think it's hugely important, particularly on health and well-being.
Brilliant. Look, thank you both for being grilled there. I think you've painted a picture very vividly of the shift that's happened really over the last 2 or 3 years, and how it's not necessarily that anything that you've talked about is particularly brand new or revolutionary. I think what I'm hearing from you is what the power shifting to those employees has meant that the dial's gone up on where the expectations set. So if you weren't doing some of this stuff before, you need to start doing more of it. And if you were doing it, then you need to get better at it. And we all need to have the humility to kind of show up and recognise that we've got to get better at it if we want to play our part in our organisations continuing to be successful. So thank you, both of you, for joining us. We're going to move on to the next session now, where what we're going to do Now, we're going to explore the role of the line manager. So we touched on this a little bit about what role does the line manager play in health and wellbeing specifically, and where's the line, where does it start and stop? And we're going to zone in on the topic of the menopause in the workplace. So recently, and thankfully, the menopause is attracting a lot more attention. It's in lots of places you're seeing it on TV with the kind of initiatives that someone like Davina McCall has been driving. And interestingly, menopausal women are now the fastest growing demographic in the workplace. So if we're not taking notice, then more fool us. We really do need to make sure we as employers understand this and really figure out the smartest way that we can find to turn up the support that we offer our employees who are experiencing this. So let's dive into this topic. I'm going to welcome Dr. Sam from Bupa and Kristy and Kyle from Lloyds Banking Group. Morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Morning.
So let's get cracking straight in with the first question. So Sam, I'm going to come to you for your view on this. So research shows that 6 in 10 women feel that their menopausal symptoms have had a negative impact on their work. So, in your opinion, how important is it that organisations and managers normalise this discussion in the workplace and kind of open this one up?
So I think it's essential that the menopause is normalised within the workplace. As we've just heard, organisations have a responsibility and an expectation now to take the health and wellbeing of their employees seriously. So as such, there is a need to provide information and to raise awareness. And this is not just to women going through or about to go through their menopause, but for all staff, to dispel any taboos and to highlight how symptoms can affect women at work. And just to stress that although the average age of the menopause in the UK is 51, premature menopause occurs in 1 in 100 women under the age of 40 and 1 in 1,000 under the age of 30. So this is not just something that may be perceived to happen to old women. And also before reaching the menopause, women may be suffering with symptoms for several years due to their fluctuating hormones. So a larger proportion of the workforce may be affected than you might immediately realise. We also know, unfortunately, that women don't like asking for help. They might feel a failure and see menopause as something they should take in their stride, as maybe their mum did. Or they might be worried that they may be stigmatised for this, so they can end up feeling very isolated and alone. So by promoting an open culture, encouraging conversations, some of that embarrassment can then be alleviated. It can enable women to speak up about their experiences, knowing that they will be understood. And we really need to support these women to enable them to reach their full potential for businesses to reap the benefit from. Research shows that 1 in 10 women who have worked during their menopause have left a job due to their symptoms. So we really need to protect this talent.
Great, thank you. I think that really sheds a great light on the specifics of the issue that we're facing into. So, Kristy, let me come to you. So, Lloyds Banking Group, you've been real fantastic early champions of supporting women's health in the workplace. From a business case perspective for Lloyds, when we go in and ask for the money to do this, can you talk about a little bit about why Lloyds Banking Group has decided to make such positive progress in this area and how you've done that?
Yeah, hi, good morning, everyone. Yeah, I think we started signposting kind of menopause as a priority from a wellbeing and health and wellbeing perspective for us beginning of last year. And obviously lots of media coverage about it. So that obviously helped kind of raise awareness more generally. And if we think about it in our kind of, from our business as a kind of banking organisation, if there's somewhere around circa 13 million menopausal women in the UK, put that in our context, that's around 3 million of our customers. And if we look at that scale from a colleague perspective, we've got around 30,000 female colleagues who are aged 40 or over. And if you think about when generally our kind of females retire, around kind of 59 and 60, they could be experiencing menopausal symptoms for kind of 20 years of that career. So in the past for us, we've had lots of informal menopause networks, for example. We've had some support around our kind of health and wellbeing policies, but we didn't necessarily openly talk about it. We didn't kind of discreetly support it at a group level. And if you contrast this, for example, with the fantastic progress we've actually made around mental health and, removing some of the stigma around that, where we were encouraging open conversation. We've got proactive support in place. And if you contrast those two populations for us, our colleagues who identify as having a mental health issue, there's around 2,000. Our potential from a menopause perspective is 10 times as great. So from a scale and kind of impact perspective, that was important for us. We also have some quite clearly stated commitments around gender equality. We've got targets for females in senior roles. And so actually, how do we actively support and retain our talented women? That was a kind of key driver for us as well. And if you think about that, we've got the women we do have in senior positions are actually almost all over the age of 40. So it's an interesting kind of dilemma for us, in the sense that you've got a population of kind of talented women who are kind of reaching kind of peaks of their careers, undertaking significant leadership roles for us, who may be experiencing menopause transition or symptoms. So in understanding that scale and impact for us as a business was kind of really important. And I think Sam touched on this, which is around that our general desire to kind of normalise conversations and actually make it relevant for all our colleagues. So it's, even if you're not directly impacted by it, you may have partners, siblings, children, who are. And it was kind of, and importantly for our managers, you might be managing somebody in that context. So actually one of the key drivers for us, and one of the cases we were making, is actually we have to normalise that conversation. So when you looked at, as we do with anything when we're trying to do an approach, we look at the kind of internal dynamics, but we also look at the external piece as well. So, when you look at that externally, some companies had a policy, some people didn't. Some people were kind of blending it into their broader health and wellbeing approach. And I think one of the key things for us was we had really strong senior sponsorship from our culture director. We also had the same with executive teams, both men and women, where there was the kind of appetite to do something highly visible for us. So it was about supporting education and awareness. And actually what that essentially crystallised for us was a clearly stated menopause promise. And so what we did in that respect was, in terms of, so I guess why a promise? And in very simple terms, this is not designed to be twee, but you don't break your promises. So it was actually more about, for us, about not having a discrete policy per se, which the promise is, but it's actually about how do we become more committed to that, being menopause aware as a business, and supporting that education piece. So, and I think we felt that word promise was a better illustration, I guess, of our commitment to colleagues. And while we might have previously overlooked kind of menopause as a impact for our people, I think it was just that importance of it being supported. And I think when we look at that promise, for us, there's certain biological truths, for want of a better word, that exist around menopause, and it allows us to then shape what that would look like for us. And I think there's a number of kind of key commitments in there, which are around, how do you make it simpler and quicker to ask for support when you need it to help you to be at your best at work, providing kind of more tailored support to help individuals have those conversations. So how do you have a proactive conversation with your manager? What tools can we give you to help in that? And actually also saying to people, and one quite important for us was, if you don't want to speak to your line manager, that's completely fine. You can ask others, and you don't have to ask, but that's okay. And it's that whole piece for us around, I guess, respect and not discriminating against people who do obviously speak up and actually say, this is what I'm struggling with, and this is what the transition looks like for me. And I think that finally, one of the key commitments for us was around, and actually really important to that broader business case we were trying to build, which was, it's not just about being menopause aware, it's about being truly informed. And I think we felt that was the only way that we could actually make a real difference in it. So I think understanding those symptoms, the effects that they have on our people, and actually how do we talk about the support that was needed.
Thank you. I love that story, and you can see just from the way you talk about it, how comprehensive your thinking's been on all elements that add up to make a real difference, and also your couple of things you said about the scale of the issue compared to mental health. I don't think perhaps people think about that, but also about all colleagues. So as a man, I think when you start delving into this topic and understanding it better, it just makes you a better human being. And outside of work, you can do a better job of the things you should be doing outside of work. So the reach here is phenomenal, I think, and people are very grateful. Even if you're not someone who is experiencing the symptoms of menopause, if your employer is helping educate you, you're grateful for that in terms of engagement. So thank you. It's a brilliant job of bringing that to life. Sam, I'm going to come back to you. You know, the data shows that 1 in 4 menopausal women say that they do not get the support they need from their manager. So how do managers approach the way they support this particular issue?
So I think firstly, back to that point about education again. So educate yourself about what changes are common during this time of life. Attend awareness sessions if you can. Even watch some of those television documentaries that you made reference to, Mark. I think there are more resources now than ever before, which is fantastic. It's just so important to understand what colleagues might need your support with. So, for example, many working women are negatively impacted by symptoms such as anxiety, poor concentration, hot flushes, poor sleep and headaches. So, you know, really understanding what they might be experiencing in the workplace, but also remembering that every woman's experience is different. You're not expected to be an expert. You're not expected to offer medical advice, but to treat the menopause with the same support and understanding as you would treat any other health concern affecting your employees, and signpost to additional support as needed. And I think if you have built those good relationships with your team and you've got to know them, then if there are any changes, then hopefully you should notice. And, you know, unfortunately, again, menopause is a particularly sensitive and personal issue with people feeling stigmatized. So you do need to try and handle it with care. But, you know, you are able to have these conversations. Don't be offended, though, if a woman doesn't feel that she can open up to you or she doesn't want to talk to you. And as Kirsty just said, what they're doing, you know, offer other people to be able to sort of act as an in-between if needed. So, you know, let people speak to whoever they feel comfortable to, and, you know, then take it from there. Some workplaces also have support groups where people can share their experiences and helpful tips. And I know how invaluable some of my colleagues at Bupa find attending those sessions too. I think you do need to remember that menopause is a recognised occupational health issue and also a gender and age equality issue. So if you don't have specific menopause policies in place to refer to, you do need to ask why and suggest a general wellbeing policy that recognises the menopause as a key health issue, you know, has got to be in place to start with. And also check that flexible working and sickness absence policies cover women going through the menopause as well.
Brilliant. Thank you. Kyle, thanks for joining us. I'm going to bring you in now. So we've heard a little bit about, or we've heard a great overview of what you've done at Lloyds Banking Group. I wonder if you could just pull out some of the specifics about how you're supporting line managers to have this conversation and provide the support needed.
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. Just 2 really quick reflections. Thank you very much, Kirsty, for bringing to life just why it's so important for us as an organisation to have faced into this, and also what you mentioned as well, Mark, about why it's so important for men to be involved in this conversation as well. Very much one thing that I believe in is that men will either be directly or indirectly impacted by menopause. If we think about loved ones, if we think about friends and relatives and close individuals who may be going through the menopause at some point in their life, it's very, very important for us to be able to have a voice and understand menopause. And Sam actually touched us at the start of our session that this isn't just a consideration for women of a certain age. It's absolutely not. It's something that we all need to be having an awareness of and a conversation about. And I realise there may be some people who have joined this session today who might be wanting to understand as an organisation or an individual, how could they potentially start to have more of a voice around menopause in the workplace. So I kind of thought to pull out the key things that work for us that might also help inspire those wanting to, let's say, even start their menopause journey as an organisation or help mobilise it. So Kirsty's already been really vocal around the menopause promise we decided to introduce, and very much that that feeling of support, and as to use Kirsty's phrase, like we don't break promises. Very much thinking at the start of our menopause journey, if I cast our minds probably back just about a year, it was really, really important for us to understand what we actually needed to do in the space of menopause. So what are the key things we actually really wanted to go for? So we knew that more promised support was definitely something that was going to be a key unlocker from a support perspective, from a cultural perspective. What also tangible things could be introduced? So one of the key things that was really, really helpful for us was actually going out to colleagues across our organisations and having live listening sessions. So very much the opportunity to actually speak to people in an open and in a safe environment and ask the questions around, what does it actually feel like to go through the menopause whilst being an employee of Lloyds Banking Group? How does it actually feel going through these day-to-day experiences, either now or historically, or also in anticipation of what may be to come? To very much understand how it actually feels to undergo those experiences now, and how the organisation either does or doesn't support you in this space. And very much to your question as well, Mark, about thinking about the support available through line managers as well, and how comfortable you as an individual feel having these kind of conversations and discussions at work. And it became quite immediately obvious that there was an immediate feeling of a lack of awareness and a lack of a voice across the organisation in regards to menopause. And quite a few people have already mentioned that existing taboo, and it was that taboo button that was such a key priority for us. And it became quite immediately obvious as well, what are the key things that colleagues are telling us they want more support with. And we split them down to 3 main pillars of activity. And they ranged from increased medical support, so easier access to actual medical support when it came to menopause, raising the profile, breaking the taboo, and actually increasing general understanding about what menopause is across the organisation to help those who need support gain that at the right point. And then also thinking about that specific line manager support piece as well, to make sure our managers have the ability to engage in these conversations in quite an open and honest and important way. All encompassing part of wellbeing. So we think, well, what do we actually start to do then in terms of those 3 pillars? So I'm very happy to say that we have worked very closely with Bupa to introduce some quite specific menopause support schemes, very much to ensure that colleagues have access to this medical menopause support. And one of them is the introduction of the Bupa menopause plan internally. So this is a menopause support plan that is available to the general public, very much to give an individual some guaranteed year-long support in the space of menopause in regards to having access to menopause specialist GPs, etc., and very much have that ongoing support as and when needed. And what we decided to do is really bring that internally and support people with accessing that at a time, and also reducing the cost for them to be able to access this. And that's been fantastic so far. The kind of feedback we've been getting from our colleagues in terms of accessing this and actually understanding what it means for them, whether it's help with things like actual consultations or prescriptions or anything that it needs to be, it's been absolutely revolutionary, dare I say. Also as well, we've invited the very lovely Dr. Sam along as well for some live colleague sessions as well. So not only to speak about the importance of menopause from a medical perspective, and also having some quite tailored specific sessions of things like HRT, hormone replacement therapy as well. And the reason why we thought it was so important to have those kind of medical conversations and bring an expert in to have these discussions is because there was such a cry from women who either due to experience the menopause or going through the menopause, or also men wanted to generally learn more about what menopause was from that biological medical perspective, to actually just share awareness and share information, help people understand this is what, at the very basic level, this is what menopause is, this is how it can impact people, this is how it's impacting our colleagues through their own voices. And these are some of the tangible steps you can take to support yourself. And again, that's just been so fantastic for us from like a cultural perspective and from an information sharing perspective as well. If we think about then going to that more taboo busting, into that more building on that awareness piece, also from a health and wellbeing perspective, because I am part of the organisation's health and wellbeing team, We focused a lot of effort in creating a one-stop shop. So on our SharePot Online health and wellbeing site, a particular menopause hub, as we've called it, an opportunity to have all encompassing information about menopause in an easily digestible space, very much with that point of supporting people to build a basic understanding. So again, understand some biological truths around the menopause. What does it actually mean? What actually is it? All through to tangible tips to support yourself as an individual, tangible tips to support yourself as a manager wanting to support your team as well. And again, I'll focus on that bit in just a second. And again, of course, a direct link through to our menopause promise, so people can understand that direct pledge we have as an organisation to support you, whatever point you may be through your menopause transition.
Sorry, Carl, I don't want to interrupt you mid. There's so much great stuff you've done. I'm just I'm so into this topic. I've just noticed we've got 10 minutes left, and I want to come to some of the questions that we've got. And also, I did have one more question really quickly that I wanted to ask both you and Kristy, which is, you've done so much, you've made so much progress, but what is, just really quickly, what is the one biggest barrier that you faced in making progress on this topic?
I think the biggest barrier personally, just to go first, Kristy, I think the biggest barrier initially was making people understand why this is such an important topic, in terms of giving people the knowledge and the understanding as why this is such an important topic and why it needs to be focused on. Kirsty's also mentioned that fact, for example, that if you think about the comparison to mental health, it technically is impacting 10 times more of our individuals. And you actually said right at the start, is one of the growing demographic groups in organisations. So I think what really worked for us to break into that barrier was ensure that both people on a more junior level and on a more senior level, both men, both women, were having active conversations and sharing their views and sharing their thoughts around this to really help prove that this is something that we need to talk about. We do need to normalise this conversation and very much be able to provide support in that way. And actually, one thing we will be sharing in the post-session communication as well is one of our externally facing media videos, where we actually got people, as an example, senior, junior, male, female, to talk about menopause in quite an honest way. That's been fantastic to break into that.
Great. Anything to add on that, Kristy? Any big barriers?
Just one very quick reflection would probably just be, one of the big learnings for us is don't be too prescriptive from a policy perspective, because it limits conversation. So I think for us, it was about that broader piece around a promise. What's the support that's there? But actually, how can we actively encourage managers to use judgment? And actually, let's create some guardrails and create some support. But actually, how do we really help them to make those connections between all the policies that we've got and give them flexibility? So if you need to change working hours, or you need to look at where people work, you can do all of that. So I think give the flexibility, don't be too prescriptive from a policy perspective, was really important for us.
Brilliant. Thank you. And it's great to hear. We're going to share a bit more detail after the event on some of the things that you've done, because I think you've really laid a great role modelling platform for how organisations can get started here. So I'm going to go to the questions we've had coming in through. Sam, I just wanted to bring you back there. Just on the topic of the menopause, I'm an organisation. This all seems a bit overwhelming. Where on earth do I start? What's the one first thing you would recommend me to do as a business owner? Because I want to start offering more support here. What would your one thing be?
I think we've just got to start talking about it. I mean, it's getting the conversation open, isn't it? And then taking it from there. Ask the employees what they want. Look what you've got already, and you know, it's just opening the gates. As you've heard from Lloyd, there's so much that can and should be done. But you know, it's once you've got that idea in mind that you're going to do it, then you know you're well on your way to starting your journey. Then. Brilliant.
And there's a theme I think today about walking towards things that maybe feel uncomfortable and just getting started, and once you get started, it's perhaps not as difficult as you thought it was going to be, or you know where to go. One topic that's come in actually that I'm amazed we've got to 54 minutes through and we haven't even mentioned the H word, hybrid working. I don't think it's come up specifically. So Nigel, you know, we've got people in our business working from home, working in the office. You know, what's your view on whether this is helping or hindering our ability to create these effective health and wellbeing environments? Sorry, that's a really tough question at 11:54.
I think it could go either way. So I think done well, it's a benefit because I believe that I call it the best of both worlds. So you can have the best world. You do your work at home, because there's no productivity drop. I mean, there's no question. There's really no evidence of productivity going down. I'm thinking about people who have the option for working at home. There are many, many jobs where you cannot work from home. We have many people in our business who hadn't got that luxury, frankly, through the pandemic, if they worked in care homes or dental practice or hospitals. But anyway, so I think the best of both worlds. You can do your work there, then you can do the socializing, the innovation, the collaboration, whatever in the office. And I think it's getting the balance of that right and giving people choice. And I think most people are particularly good at an advocate of forcing people into the office 5 days a week, like some employers have done either.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. And I guess on a similar theme, Stephen, we've got a specific question here, but I think there's a broader issue, which is, my line manager works outside of the country, only sort of physically visits us occasionally. I guess that's replicated whether people are outside the country of this remote leadership. How do remote leaders make sure that their teams feel that sense of belonging that we've talked about?
Yeah, it's not going to be the things that you read in Metro or something like that around the pub quizzes all the time and the stuff that we enjoyed for the first 10 minutes of the pandemic and then got very weary of very quickly. We know that connection sits at the heart of this, and the managers can actually, as with many of these things, creating a sense of connection involves looking deeper and finding out what you can do as a manager. So it's not an exhaustive list, but some of the things would be around helping people feel a sense of diversity and inclusion, helping people feel a sense of trust, conflict resolution, collaboration, using technology to increase collaboration. And when done well, and it can be done very badly, the manager plays a critical role in all of those things in order to help people feel that sense of connection, feel that temporarily or longer sense of belonging that's been removed. So it doesn't. I've always worked for managers that are in a different country to me, and they've always done it quite well. And so I guess I'm one of the lucky ones. But I know that when I feel involved, when I feel a sense of belonging to the team, the rest naturally follows. And you noticed as I was talking, then these are about culture. They're about the set of aspired values and behaviours and that are tying this all together. So I guess if people are panicking, you made the joke earlier, nice and easy, a list of things to do there. They're not an exhaustive list. And if you can start chipping away at them and as Sam said, just starting to have the conversation can often be the critical first move in improving connection.
Brilliant. Thank you, Stephen. And I think we're pretty much done. We've managed to cram an enormous amount into today. So thank you so much to all of our guests who've done a brilliant job in bringing this topic to life. One of the great privileges of hosting this event is, as well as getting to have interesting chats, I learn loads. Every time we do it in live theatre, I'm learning things and thinking, well, I hadn't thought about that, or I'd better remember that. So I think we've done a brilliant job there. We've run 2 polls while we've been on the call today. The first one was about how confident line managers are in general on the topic of health and wellbeing. 40% of you said extremely, but interestingly, 56% of you said not very, and 5% of you said not at all. So there's clearly a big job to do on the overall topic of health and wellbeing. And then when we talked about menopause and asked the same question, but specifically on that topic, only 37% of you said you were comfortable in opening up this discussion and starting to go on that journey. 73% of people don't feel comfortable. So hopefully today we've started that journey for you. We've maybe triggered something in you. What I've learned today, I think more than anything, is this point we made right at the start, that power has shifted, no doubt about it, from employer to employee. We've had an interesting conversation locally in our team about, wouldn't it make a difference if we saw all of our employees in the same way we see our customers, that they have a choice about whether to buy our product or not? And that straight away takes you to a different place. And I think we've seen lots of evidence of that, about the need for organizations to rewire the way they think, line managers, leaders to rewire it, organizations and leaders to show humility in recognizing that There's more we need to do. We need to get better, and we need to be curious and put ourselves in our employees' shoes to understand what experience we're truly creating. So I found it a fascinating discussion. Thank you so much for joining us. And today, as we said at the start, the Academy module will be available on the menopause specifically. So hopefully that's helpful to you. And we'll see you again in 2 or 3 months for another fantastic conversation, I hope. So see you soon. Thanks for joining.